Everybody wants to know how Joe Burrow is going to be affected by that dislocation of the pinky, dislocation of this knuckle right here. And he was struggling with it a little bit in terms of how do I support it? How do I brace it? And he just ended up fighting through it and playing through the pain, showed his toughness, both mentally and physically. Well, the best guy that I could find or think of to talk about Joe Burrow and what he's dealing with is the legendary Ken Anderson. Ken Anderson had hand injuries. Ken Anderson had other injuries as a quarterback that he had to deal with and focus on just throwing the football and forgetting about the injury. So you're going to find out what Ken Anderson has to say about what Joe Burrow is dealing with. And I think you're going to be interested in what the should-be Hall of Famer has to say. Welcome to In the Trenches with Dave Lapham, brought to you by First Star Logistics in our beautiful studios at First Star Logistics. And my pleasure to talk to the greatest quarterback in Cincinnati Bengals history. My roommate should be Hall of Famer. They should shut Canton down because this guy's not in the Hall of Fame. Number 14 in your program, number 1 in your heart, Mr. Ken Anderson. K.A., what's up, my man?
Not much, David. Just thanks for having me on again.
I'll tell you, that this is right up your alley. Okay, Joe Burrow, as you know, Kenny, I know you follow the Bengals closely. You watch every play of every game. Joe Burrow has that injury where he dislocates the pinky finger and he continues to play, but, he tried a glove, he tried, some tape, he tried different things, but he basically said, I'm not going to use any of it. Why wouldn't any of that stuff work? And how bad is the injury to the pinky when you're trying to throw the football like that?
Well, I think as much as anything, Dave, it's, holding the football. I've got my little prop here, and with my pinky finger, I put a lot of pressure on that when I'm gripping the football to throw it. I don't think it's as much, when the action of throwing the ball, because that's the first finger that comes off. But I think where a lot of the pain comes is just the pressure I've got to have on that pinky finger, throwing the ball and getting it into a throwing motion.
So you got that big old hand, man. How big? Look at that hand wrapping around that football. Ken Anderson got some big hands for his size, man. So the pinky finger, if you're feeling that type of pain as you start into your throwing motion, how does that affect the velocity, the spin rate, all those kind of things when you're throwing the football?
Well, I think it's just, how much can you stand of the pain? Because like I say, you're getting ready to throw it and you got a grip on the ball, a firm grip, and now you're letting it go. And like I said, that's the first finger that comes off the ball when you're throwing it. So I think it's more of a pain tolerance thing, than anything else. And I think the one encouraging thing, when he went back in, after that, he was still pretty effective throwing the football.
Yeah, he did it on the first series. He did it on that strip sack when he got hit and fumbled. That's when it happened to him. And his numbers were still, crazy, pretty good. He was 24 for 40, 300 yards, a touchdown, and 2 interceptions. Well, if Jamar Chase catches that ball that he throws early in the game, right after he dislocated his pinky finger, that's a 71-yard touchdown pass. He'd be 25 for 40 for 371 yards, 2 touchdowns, and interception, have a quarterback rating well over 100. He threw the ball pretty darn well the rest of the day.
Right. And you saw him on the sideline grimacing when he threw it. And I think, when you go to a glove, it's more the comfort of that feeling like you've got a grip on the ball, and I don't know. I can't recall, he never got to the real cold weather last year. And I've never seen him wear a glove on his right hand where, if you look at Ben Roethlisberger, for example, he's always got a glove on his right hand. So, no matter what the elements, he's comfortable with that. If all of a sudden, Dave, when I was playing, if I had to put a glove on, it just takes a while to get used to that and the control you have over the football. So it's something that's tough to do right in the middle of a game.
And that's why, people like, why don't you shoot it up? Well, the worst thing to do is have it numb. You got to be able to feel that football, right? You can't have a numb pinky finger and eliminate that part of it from throwing the football, right?
Right. Well, again, it takes away from the control of your football because, like I say, that's a significant part for me, of the pressure of gripping a football. I got to be able to feel that.
And other people, oh, just tape two together. Well, linemen can do that. We dislocate fingers, tape two together, and the other one support. You can't do that. Again, you're only throwing with two fingers and a thumb then. I mean, how do you control the football?
I don't know. To get them together, I can't even put it in my hand, to get those last two together and have any kind of feel doing it. So I don't think that's really an option.
So do you think maybe he ends up fooling around with some gloves, different manufacturers, different sizes, different styles to see if a glove, might be able to stabilize that finger a little bit and he still could be able to grip the football the way he likes to grip it?
Yeah, it might give him a little more protection, for it, at least, keep things compressed in there, that kind of feeling. And like I say, I think that they make gloves for quarterbacks now that are pretty effective. I mean, you see a lot of quarterbacks, wearing them, basically all the time. And, some of it might help with the sweat. But like I say, I know Big Ben, he wears one all the time, no matter what the weather conditions.
So, I mean, is it a mental thing, Kenny? I mean, obviously there's physical pain, but does it start to affect you mentally? Do you say, man, can I rip it on that out route? Is that window big enough for, do you start to wonder if you still have the juice to be able to get throws in windows that you had prior to the injury?
Well, I think that's what you got to get a feel for, at least pregame. I don't know how much throwing he's going to do, during this week at practice to kind of let this thing heal as much as it can. And I know there are, some things that the doc can give you before the game that can kind of dull the pain a little bit, maybe to get you through. But, when that's your throwing hand, you've got to have feel on the football, so you can't numb it totally.
So one thing is, okay, always get the swelling out. Is it almost where the swelling might be beneficial somewhat, where it can stabilize, that joint a little bit if there's a little bit of swelling there as opposed to not, or am I overthinking it?
Well, I think you may be overthinking it a little bit. I'm not a hand surgeon, and when I broke my hand up in Green Bay, what was it, 77?
Right.
Or no, 78.
78, yep.
It was, that was, I broke a bone right up there in my hand and it was popping out. It had two pins in it. So that was a totally different thing than what he's going through.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you too, is I remember it was on a follow through, you hit a helmet and broke that hand. But do you alter your mechanics at all, or do you make sure that you don't alter your mechanics at all to try to, overcome or compensate for injury like that?
Well, I was watching that Monday night game and Josh Allen was talking about, well, when it's cold, you got to drop your arm a little bit so you can get a better spiral on it. And I'm thinking, man, I was 59 below and I wasn't doing that. And the ball was going, okay. So I don't know if I was buying that one quite a bit. But I think it's finding a comfort level, Dave, with you throwing the football. And all quarterbacks, throw at different angles depending on what the throw may dictate or what the defense is doing. If you got to drop it down, if you got to go more over the top. So, the one thing I know is that, although he's only in his second year, this guy figures things out in a hurry. And I know he'll have a plan for this week, and I'm sure he's going to be effective.
You mentioned about in practice this week. I'm sure they're going to shut him down, particularly in the early stages. I would not be surprised if he doesn't throw Wednesday or Thursday, say, for example, and then Friday, maybe test it a little bit. You got to do that little balancing act, like you say, heal it up, but then you got to see if you can throw the way you want to throw, and you have to see how the ball is going to respond to the way you're throwing the football. Do you think that's going to be a big part of it all week long? Is kind of balancing act between the healing process and seeing, man, what can I and can't do?
Well, I just go back when I broke my hand, and I had it in a cast for a month. And that was when Tiger was getting a lot of heat and we were going out to San Francisco. And I figured I got to play in this game. And so I went in the beginning of the week, said, cut it off. And I tried to play and I didn't have the strength in it. And, I got off to a pretty good start, but then all of a sudden they started calling the deeper routes and those kind of things. And I just didn't have the strength, to go ahead and get that ball in there. So I think, a lot of it is, okay, what can I do? What can I do? And take that into account with play calling.
You said San Francisco. It's ironic. That's the opponent this week for Joe Burrow after sustaining the injury as the San Francisco 49ers. They're a thorn in the side in so many ways, including 2 rings we should have with this organization. But, yeah, That's my concern is I wonder, as he goes through a progression, boy, I'm not sure if I feel like I can juice it to that deep quadrant of the field. And, now you're minimizing yourself a little bit and maybe, defenses play coverages to see and test you to try to see how well you can throw balls down the football field and all that sort of thing. I mean, little things become bigger things, don't they? I mean, there's a lot that goes on. There's a big ripple effect when something like this occurs.
Well, no question. And it certainly would help them out if Joe Mixon, can get off, to a good start, where they got the pressure of the running game, where all of a sudden now you might get a few receivers more wide open for you.
Yeah, there's no doubt. And I think I'm glad that you were available to us to get your opinion on this because, the most accurate thrower in the history of football, in my opinion. And, you were pinpoint with your accuracy. And Joe Burrow has that type of ability too, Kenny. I mean, this kid really throws the ball in tight spots, doesn't he?
Oh, yeah. No, he's got confidence, and I think that, it's not only confidence in you, it's confidence in your receivers as well. And, he trusts them with what they're doing, and he's going to put it in a spot for you to make a play. And if you don't get it, nobody's going to get it. And, and I think the other thing, Dave, he's seeing coverages real well. So he has an idea, as he's dropping back where he's going to go with the football. So he just his football IQ just seems to me like it's off the charts.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, he's got a beautiful mind for football. There's no doubt about it. The one thing that he does really well too is pocket manipulation, and seems to have the eyes in the back of the head kind of thing. And I think that's going to be a big deal too. And it's on the offensive line to say, you know what, we let him get hit too much. That's one of the reasons that he has this injury is a strip sack from behind, as he's trying to climb the pocket and make a throw. And, we got to do everything we possibly can to give him as much, not only time, but give him some space, because the last thing you want to have, I mean, when you came back from that broken hand, people don't understand, I mean, how tough-minded you have to be and physically tough, mentally tough, because you're in the pocket, bodies are closing around you. You broke the hand by following through and hitting the helmet, and you got to stand in there and do it over and over again. That's not easy to do. That's not easy for Joe to do if they're, crowding his space and all that sort of thing. That's a tough thing to get over mentally, isn't it?
Well, it is, but I have no doubts about him. How he's come back from the knee surgery and the confidence he's developed there. And, he's been getting hit a lot. I know he's got to be banged up a little bit, and he stands up and he kind of keeps going with it. So, from all that aspect, the mental aspect, I know he can handle it.
So he's got a young receiver in Jamar Chase. The ball that he threw to Jamar Chase that Jamar said yesterday, in fact, on a press conference that he tried to double catch it. He bobbled it and tried to double catch it and then swatted it to a defender, and it goes right in the guy's hands. When you throw a perfect ball like that as a quarterback and tragedy like that happens to your receiver, what do you do to try to get him out of any mental funk he may be in? Do you try to go back to him right away? Do you talk to him and say, let's just compartmentalize and move on? Do you just leave it alone? I mean, is it based on the personality of the guy? I mean, how do you handle that kind of thing?
Well, I don't think you have to go and get loud about it. What did Trumpy say when I was in the huddle? He could tell when I was screwing up because he gave me the hairy eyeball. He's got a great relationship, with his receivers. And, like I always said, Dave, I'm not going to ever bitch at a receiver for missing something or an offensive lineman for missing a block. You guys don't turn around to bitch at me when I throw an interception, So, I mean, we're a team in this thing, and everybody's going to make a mistake. And all right, let's go to the next play and make another play.
When you have a receiver, I'm going to go into the coaching mind of Ken Anderson now too, because obviously you won a Super Bowl ring as a coach with the Pittsburgh Steelers, and so you were on both ends of it. You're in meetings and on the football field and in the locker room as a player, and then as a coach as well. So you have a receiver that's struggling a little bit from time to time, streaky with success and drops has been Jamar Chase's rookie year so far at this stage. How do you help him get out of a little bit of a funk? Teams are doubling him now. They're paying attention to him. Safeties are tilting coverage that way. They're clouding in his direction. Do you move him around? Do you motion him? And that's a balancing act because you have a really good slot receiver. You have another good receiver in Higgins and Boyd. I mean, you don't want to take things away from those guys. How do you handle that kind of thing?
Well, I think as far as getting his confidence up, it probably starts during the week in practice, that you do, your throwing drills and, and make things tough on them, on occasion. And, and it kind of comes back to you. It's, geez, he couldn't catch a pass in the preseason, as I recall. And then he came out when the season started and made plays. And, like Joe said, don't worry about him. He shows up on Sunday. So, everybody's going to drop one every once in a while. And, he's going to make a lot of big plays for the rest of the year for us.
So Joe Burrow has, like you had that analytical mind. I mean, you were a accounting major, correct? I mean, you're a math major.
Okay, man, I'm not an accountant. I'm a math major, Dave.
Math major.
Mathematician.
So you had a capacity for a lot of numbers, information, all that sort of thing. Joe has a big brain for that type of stuff, and analytics and information, all that sort of thing too. How much did that help you become the great player you became, and how much is it helping Joe Burrow work his way toward that?
Well, I think it's just, you anticipate things, and you talk about a lot during the week that if we see this coverage, we'd like to get to this. And I'm sure they do a lot of, check with me's, and then, do 3 ways. It's a run, a pass, or the third one, it could be whatever. So they're giving him a chance to get in the best play. But I think that's what I like about him is he's seeing the defense and knows when he has a bad play and getting them into a good play. Classic example was the Jacksonville game. When all of a sudden it's a tight game and, we got to get a field goal out of this deal. And, he sees them coming with cover 0. They're in a formation and he calls, the wide receiver screen. Well, by alignment, CJ Uzama had never run it from that position.
Yep.
But, and that's being understanding what the nuances of a play are, that, when this, well, what everybody's going to do, not just my assignment. And, and all of a sudden, they pull it off, for him to see that and know what he wanted to get to, I thought was amazing.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, because he and CJ looked at him like, really? And Joe looked at him and winked and nodded his head like, yeah, really? CJ's like, okay, cool.
And one of the great statements, after that, you can't zero me.
Let's go, baby. That's what I'm talking about. That's an all-out blitz. 0 blitz. Keep 0 me? Talking about.
Right. Coming to the sideline, you can't 0 me, no doubt. Let me ask you this: as I was thinking it over about throwing the football with an injured pinky, is it easier to throw the football from the pocket with a platform, where you're transferring your weight, you're stepping into your target and throwing the football? Is that an easier thing to do for your hand and your pinky, as opposed to getting out of pocket and maybe not being able to establish that platform? Does that put more pressure on your hand and your pinky releasing it when you don't have your mechanics and your platform totally underneath you? Or is that not that big a difference?
I don't think it's that big a deal, because you're going to keep the same pressure on the ball, whether you're throwing from the pocket or you're throwing, on the move. And, Joe's been so effective throwing on the move. He's had to get outside the pocket sometimes. And, he's got great vision downfield. And, I just know he's going to, overcome this. And, it was a tough one for us last week. And as you know, Dave, you're not going to win many games when you have 4 turnovers.
Yeah.
Then you lose one of the touchdowns, as you talked about, with Jamar Chase. So, I mean, because you take away, you give us 7 there, and then you take away the 7 on the fumble, who knows what the heck's going to happen. We got down 24-0. We got it back within 2 with all kinds of time left over. So it's just one of those things, you just got to eliminate the mistakes. I'm not, worried about Joe Mixon being a fumbler, give him the ball. I'm not worried about Jamar dropping to keep throwing the ball to him, and I think, Joe would like to have that one back that he was throwing in the end zone that got picked off. But, you're trying to make a play. You're trying to dig your team out of a hole, and sometimes that happens.
The fact that they were down 24-0, like you said, and a big part of it, early on was turnovers. And like you said, the first one, Jamar's malady, could have been 7, and they ended up kicking a field goal. So that was a 10-point swing. Joe's ended up being 14 or minimum of 10, because they're already in field goal range. and they take it back to the house for a touchdown. So that was a 20-point swing minimum, maybe a 24-point swing potentially. So, that obviously dictated the football game. But the fact that they scored 22 points in less than a quarter, it was like 14 minutes and 19 seconds it took them to put 22 points on the board. What does that tell you about the explosiveness of this football team?
Well, I think we've seen it all year. It's in spurts, that we've got an explosive offense, and it's all got to work together, and as you know, Dave, I didn't get good till our offensive line got good again, and then I became a pretty good player for our Super Bowl year. When I started off my career, I started off very good, but what did I have? A good offensive line in front of me, and just for whatever reasons, in 78, 79, things had started to go downhill up front, and I wasn't a very good quarterback. So, and it was tough last week. I think we had 2 starters that were out of the game in the offensive line, and how important that is for the 5 guys that are used to playing with each other. It makes a big difference when you insert 2 new parts, especially with one as the center.
Right.
I will say the only time that I can remember that a center came in and started a game when he had never played center in a game before was we were down in Houston, and you had to come in, and we never had a missed snap or a miscue at all, and that's why they called you the tool. I'm a guard, but I can play tackle. Put me at center, you name it, I'll do it.
Yeah, well, I remember I felt very comfortable with you that were taking the snaps from me because you were going to make sure that I wasn't going to have a bad snap. You made sure that transfer happened, man. But that was a heck of an experience. Blair got hurt. He hurt his knee in the Chargers game and had to finish that Chargers game uncovered. So, that was a little bit different deal. And then down there in Houston, Curly Culp. Whoa, first NFL started center was Curly Culp. I'm like, baby, welcome to the NFL. Here's the show. It's the big show.
Well, the thing is, when Blair got hurt, he was also our long snapper. So they brought Bob Johnson back, and Bob was down to about 215 pounds. And of course, he was my center for the first part of my career. And I remember when he came back in Houston. I mean, I think he was always scared to death of Curly Culp. And I really, wanted to give you $100. Just go down for a play to make Bob think he's got to come in. That would have been worth the price of everything. Yeah,
you were working on me on that. I just couldn't do it to Bob, man. That could have been little palpitations there. That one would have been a tough dynamic.
At First Star Logistics, we're a very strict company that really puts the pressure on our employees. Breaks? What are those?
That's what I'm talking about, Icky. Get the body right, then the mind's right.
Gotta get that body right. That's right. Yes, sir.
Become a star with a chance to earn the highest commission percentages in the industry as a freight broker agent. Check out firststarlogistics.com.